by John Bell in 1965 and has been experimentally verified several times since then, including one macroscopic verification. It's not just true on the quantum level, it seems to be true on the macroscopic level too. And then there's Jungian synchronicity. Do I have to explain synchronicity, or does everybody here know about synchronicity? Okay, Jungian synchronicity is another type of non-local connection, just like Bell's theorem. A patient has a dream about a beetle, and when he's telling the dream to the therapist, the beetle appears on the window. There's a classic Jungian synchronicity. Things are connected in non-causal ways, and to learn to think in non-causal ways, to learn to think in a right-brained way, you make these arbitrary connections, and then you find out what good are these connections. De Bono, because he's an industrial psychologist by profession, he points out this leads frequently to astounding breakthroughs in business. New products are created, new advertising campaigns are generated. I don't know if anybody here is into running a multinational corporation or running an advertising agency, but you can use it that way. But you can use it to free up your thinking in general. Like I first accidentally acquired Poe combination was Wombat, Poe, George Washington Bridge. Now somebody told me how to make money out of that. To start with, you can't make a good Japanese poem out of it.
All good Wombats give you George Washington Bridge.
Come on, we can do better than that, can't we?
Cartoon series starring the Wombats who lived George Washington Bridge. Sorry.
Well, you might get away with that. A television series about two little wombats living on the George Washington Bridge and surviving all the heavy traffic and everything.
Well, it's George Washington's wooden teeth were made from the sort of tree that wombats live in Australia.
That sounds like it might even be true. You see, everything is connected with everything. Can we do any better than that?
Well, a couple years ago, the Melbourne in '84 World Science Fiction Convention Committee had on their posters a picture of a wombat that said, "Wasker, a wombat you can trust." And so just a political reference to George Washington.
Oh, wombat you can trust. Yeah, George Washington, according to legend, never told a lie. So maybe if you want to advertise a new porn movie, all you need is a cute little wombat, George Washington behind the wombat, and everybody will think it's as wholesome as possible. Maybe a good advertising campaign. Well, I'm as desperate as the rest of you.
Well, how about, an Australian Airlines with flights from Sydney to New York City, and has a photograph of a wombat on the George Washington Bridge, saying, "I never thought I'd get this far."
Yeah, you see, we've freed up one fantastic idea already. Who wants to do a Japanese poem about a wombat, a haiku about a wombat on the George Washington Bridge?
The wombat is big, now it's black. It was run over on the bridge.
The wombat, I know the wombat is sad because he has lost his mate. But what is he doing on the George Washington Bridge? Now that sounds more like a parody of a haiku than a real haiku.
Washington, New York, April, rain on George Washington Bridge, lonely wombat in Central Park.
Beautiful. See, we generated a real haiku out of that. Did that have 17 syllables too?
No, but if I mess with it, I will.
I had the beginning of another idea, but I seem to have lost it. Wombat. Oh yeah, George Washington Bridge is not only a monument in New York, it's a character in one of my novels. There's a scientist in one of my novels called George Washington Bridge.
Yeah.
And although it's not explicit in the novel, it's quite likely that he was stumping wombats. So I didn't even know I had that connection in mind when I wrote it, but I could have derived that whole plot by just playing this game. You say, yeah, I mean, it's possible.
And in a couple of years, if they sold the London Bridge, they sell the George Washington Bridge and it becomes a museum piece in Sydney.
It'll
wombats
be
crawling
infested
over.
with
Yeah.
wombats, yeah. The Miskatonic University, Poe, J.R. Bob Dobbs. Now this should bring out the best of
Praise
all
Bob.
class. Praise Bob.
Praise his
Bob.
He's a dean of school.
I think you could sell.
Yep.
I think you could sell T-shirts that say Miskatonic University, J.R. Bob Dobbs, Dean of Studies. A lot of people would like those T-shirts, so you could sell them in head shops all over the country.
J.R.
Other places.
Bob Dobbs Scholarship at Miskatonic University.
Yeah.
Lovecraft did not die, but his J.R. Bob Dobbs.
Ah.
They have the Dobbs chair of sales management.
The J.R. Bob's Memorial Department of Black Studies.
J.R. Bob Dobbs got an honorary degree.
Now that's very plausible. I could go
That's
into.
his doctorate, perhaps.
In the book of the Subgenius, it says he went there for a semester.
You see, we got that by accident, but by some other process to get into the book of the Subgenius. There's obviously a deep connection between Bob and Miskatonic. We're just scratching the surface of it.
He was there a little bit while I was there. I didn't know him.
You were thrown out, expelled.
No, he was
Smoking
expelled.
cigarettes.
I stayed in for a while. I dropped out.
Played on their team, the Werewolves.
No, that was the Goatheads. The Werewolves was the soccer team.
Oh, excuse me.
I think they're building a new school of theology, the J.R. Bob Dobbs
Who's got
School of
pulled it got
Theology.
down?
Yeah, the J.R. Bob Dobbs School of Theology.
Bob Dobbs
Yeah, it was
University.
Miskatonic.
And there was a story about how J.R. Bob Dobbs was expelled from Miskatonic University because he was, quote, giving lectures and taking notes at the same time.
They're coming out with a new movie called Jehovah One and the Temple of Cthulhu.
Well, better yet, they thought J.R. Bob Dobbs got expelled from Miskatonic University because they cut him on a George Washington Bridge with a wombat.
You know, you can tell somebody. You know, you can tell somebody who's been to Miskatonic. They have a T-shirt that says, "Have you hugged your shotgun?"
Well, Bob Dobbs was the guest of honor at CthulhuCon at Miskatonic in '79.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Yeah, that was
Few
great.
people remember being there.
They wanted it, they were there.
They brought in some Alamut black hashish from Afghanistan. That was the Arabian branch of the Campus Crusade for Cthulhu. And most of the people who were at the Cthulhu Con got so stoned they couldn't remember it afterwards and go around swearing there never was such a convention. There are only a few of us who remember in detail the shocking things Norman Spedrack was doing. And what Harlan Ellison got caught at with the Chamberlain. Oh, well, I shouldn't be gossiping like that. You know how to get even with the phone company? Everybody's angry at the phone company. The way to get even is you go to a gas station late at night when there's nobody around and you make a long-distance call. And then they come on and they say deposit $7.50. You say lots of luck. And they say, but you've got to put the money in, you made the phone call. You say, don't kid me, I'm alone at a gas station, you can't catch me, I'm not going to pay the money. They say, but you've got to pay the money, it's the law. Har, har, har. So then, you see these operators, I don't want to put them down, but these are the kind of women who wear panties with the day of the week on them, and they're always wearing the wrong day, you know that day? And so she puts a superior on, and her superior says, "Sir, give me your name and address." They think you're going to be dumb enough to fall for that. So when they say, "Sir, give me your name and address," you say, "Johnny Carson, Studio City, Los Angeles, California."
Or J.R. Bob Dobbs.
J.R. Bob Dobbs, Church of the Subgenius, Dallas, Texas. Then she puts her superior on, which is a graduate of Harvard Business School, and says, "You realize we have laser tracking on this and 17 anti-aircraft guns are aimed at this phone booth. Are you going to pay us or are you going to die?" And you say, "Bullshit!" Because they're not that efficient yet. So that's how to get even with the phone company. I hope you got something to profit out of today. At least you learned how to get even with the phone company.
Simply dodges with your reason the IRA. Or the insurance.
Yeah, move to Europe. Borborygmus. Originus?
Rigmus.
Rigmus. Oh, Borborygmus. So that's the kind of rumblings that you heard in Bogart's stomach in that classic scene of the African Queen. Poe Schrödinger's cat. Does anybody need to have Schrödinger's cat explained to them?
Schrödinger's cat may or may not have borborygmus.
Yeah.
Well, there's a study at San Jose State that if you read Schrödinger's cat, you go through all the different orders. You read first book, second book, third book, and go through all those different orders, you'll never have borborygmus again.
Hey, now that would be a great advertising slogan to go on the cover. Read this book and you'll never have borborygmus again. Yeah, but we can do better than that. Schrödinger's cat is both dead and alive. Can you have borborygmus and not have it at the same time? That would be a great
You could
product.
probably still have it when you're dead.
You can sell it to Catholics. A product that does absolutely nothing. And you say, with this product, you essentially don't have borborygmus anymore. You only have the accidents of borborygmus. If they believe that holy wafer story, they'll believe that one. So using the Schrödinger's cat principle, you can sell a totally useless product to a whole vast section of the population. Anybody got any other ideas about quantum uncertainty and borborygmus? Oh, come on, you're not working. Okay, take another break and refresh yourself. Maybe you'll do better after the break.
Borborygmus is the prelude to Schrödinger's cat coughing up fur balls. Yeah, it's the prelude to coughing up Schrödinger's cat coughing up fur balls.
Borborygmus, how about a race co-republic?
I have a friend of my roommate.
We've got a good one here locally.
Well, me, the Republican governor, causing even more discord in our state house.
He's more like an emperor, say Emperor North.
Yeah, he's sort of a discordant politician, isn't he?
Well, also the first letter of each of them are the 5th and 18th letters of the English alphabet, which adds to 23, which is a holy number of the reeds.
Oh, wow. Hey, yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, we're getting into real right-brain thinking now, yeah.
Are we sure Eric's not here?
Illuminati opposed serendipity. That's sort of the process of thought by which I created the version of the Kennedy assassination in Illuminatus, whereby, just by coincidence, there were 5 assassins representing 5 different conspiracies all shooting at once. And
All
that's
the
why,
initials HC.
that's why all the orthodox government reports and all the dissenting conspiracy theories, none of them were able to make sense out of it, because they all assumed it did make sense, where actually it was an enormous serendipity. Just 5 conspiracies happened to meet the same day. That makes as much sense to me as any of the other theories I've seen. Even if I didn't invent it myself, that's no reason for thinking it's crazy, just because I'm crazy.
Actually, that the Illuminati there in, I guess it's in Cleveland, they have this big serendipity machine which led to all the witnesses of the assassination happened to die, but they didn't kill any of them, they just sort of revved up this machine.
Oh, a serendipity machine. That's a great idea.
So you might park right next to the perpetual motion machine, right?
I thought it was, they moved it.
It's powered by perpetual motion machine.
They call the Illuminati papers as a miracle in the concept of serendipity.
There you go.
Yeah, that wheel is supposed to be a serendipitous device. Of course, most of them are wired, but theoretically it's supposed to be totally stochastic. I love that scene in Casablanca where Louis says, I have to close this place down. I found this gambling here. And the croupier comes out and says, here's your winnings, sir. And that was a serendipitous occurrence in that movie, wasn't it?
Well, some of the, I think the Alamo Church suggests that the Illuminati own all the pornographic magazines, like Penthouse. And they own, in Penthouse letters, there's a column called Serendipity. And that's actually where the Illuminati agents pass messages back and forth to each other.
Every time you see an ad in a newspaper that says, thanks to St. Jude for favors granted, you ever seen those ads?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's an Illuminati agent reporting that he completed his assassination in that town and didn't get discovered. That's their code. I'm at liberty to reveal that now. It's been secret for many years. Have you ever seen, every now and then, some Weisenheimer puts one in the paper, it says, you're all welcome, signed St. Jude. Those people should get an answer occasionally.
Have you seen the one that says, "Hey St. Jude, baby, how come you haven't granted me wealth and riches beyond my dreams? Too late, baby."
Sounds like somebody's gone over to the other side. But, I was going to, where did I get to? I wanted to repeat that number for people interested in the Endomax, 213-390-2388. And I hope I'll get my Endomax back when I'm leaving. I hope this is in California.
I'm a traveling sales representative.
You get a commission.
I'm not taking the commissions because that would eventually come out and get me in trouble.
Is that a store or a factory or an individual's home?
It's a small company called Mega Dynamics. But that's not their phone number, that's the phone number of a sales representative. It's made by a small company called Mega Dynamics.
So if the way we observe the universe through all these, as we've discovered here, we can't really be fallible, and find the absolute truth because there's all these little wobbles in the universe, even in the cases that seem most true. Are we just like the best, we're trying to shoot for the best we can, like 90% of the time? That seems true.
Well,
Act on that?
I think what we should shoot for is the best model we can make at that time. And the way to shoot for that is by taking in as much knowledge as we can from all the different reality tunnels. But when we got the best possible model for the time, we should remember it's only for that time. We can't predict what the data of tomorrow will reveal. And we're going to have to revise that model eventually. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 5 months. In some cases, we may have to revise it in 5 minutes. I used to know a teacher of general semantics who had a collection of horrible accident stories to show what happened to people who didn't check there, to see that the model was still up to date. And Freudians used to object, these aren't examples of improper inference, this is obviously a strong, unconscious, self-destructive urge. I know he had stories like somebody stepped into an elevator shaft without looking to see if the elevator was there. I don't know if that's unconscious suicide or it's just that we have the model when the door opens, there's an elevator there. Some of us have got so conditioned to that we don't even look to see if the elevator really is there. But you see, sometimes it may be necessary to revise your map in a split second before you put your foot all the way into the shaft. You better check to see if there really is an elevator there. Some models can last for 300 years, like Newtonian physics. But since everything is accelerating, it's very doubtful that models can last that long anymore. To just run down one of my favorite trajectories, a French statistician named Angela, using information theory to estimate the amount of information at a given time, took all the information at the time of the birth of Christ and called it 1 unit. I call it 1J, in honor of the person whose birth date we're starting from. And for knowledge to double, measurable knowledge to double, took 1,500 years, and then we had 2J. Now, if we kept going at that rate forever, that knowledge would not have doubled again by now. We'd have to wait till the year 3000. But it doesn't go at that linear rate. Knowledge accelerates. So the next doubling was in 1750, and we had 4J. After 1500, we had the collapse of the papal control over Europe, the rise of non-papal nations. After 1750, we had the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the first Mexican Revolution, the Bolivar revolutions, and the whole Industrial Revolution. So when knowledge doubles, it shakes things up. The next doubling only took 150 years and occurred by 1900, and we had 8J. I call this the jumping Jesus phenomenon because it jumps faster all the time. The next doubling only took 50 years, and by 1950 we had 16J. And in that interval we had 2 world wars, the rise and fall of fascism, the rise of communism, which is still going on. And the next doubling only took 10 years till 1960, and by then I was reading articles about the computer revolution, cryonics, and everything that is fashionable to talk about now. They were just beginning back then. The next doubling took 7 years, and by 1967 we had 64J. That was the height of the youth revolution all around the world. It even happened in China, the Red Guard revolution. It's when Mao co-opted it instead of fighting it. He was the only ruler of the world who had sense to join the youth revolution instead of trying to stifle it. The next doubling happened by 1973, and we had 128J. This is an accelerated acceleration. In the Stone Age, engineers measured machines in revolutions per second. In the Stone Age, you could say that we had revolutions per millennium. RPM, revolutions per millennium. By the time of the Renaissance, we were beginning to get revolutions per century. In the 20th century, we got to the point of revolutions per generation. Now we're getting to revolutions per decade. So things are moving faster all the time. So the idea that some model of the universe, like the Newtonian, will last for 300 years is very unlikely. All the scientific models of 1950 are beginning to crack up. We'll have new models by the end of the century in almost every field. Most field they're arguing about what will the new paradigm be like. They admit the old paradigm is breaking down under the weight of all the new data. So that's another meaning of everything you know is wrong. Whatever you can be sure of today, there's going to be more reason to doubt it in the next 5 years. And there was one other thing I wanted to call to your attention. There is a new newsletter about to be published. The first copies ought to be out in April. This is called Trajectories, which is a word I use a lot, as you may have noticed. Trajectories is the newsletter of the future. It deals with the trajectories of current technological and sociological trends, what the next decade will be like, what the next 20 years will be like, what major change humanity is going through. The editor is Robert Anton Wilson. The co-editor, special correspondent on feminist futurism, is Arlen Riley Wilson, with whom I have been living for 30 years now. And the associate editor is D. Scott Appel, young science fiction writer. I think it's going to be a damn good magazine. And anybody who wants to subscribe, it's $20 for 1 year, $35 for 2 years. And if anybody wants to subscribe for 3 years, that's $40. And there's the address, and make your checks out to Permanent Press.
Say, what does that say? No, come on, I can't read that. It says 12740
Mason?
Matteson, Matteson Avenue, Los Angeles 90066. Los Angeles 90066. Make your checks out to Permanent Press. $40 check and you get 3 years. So you don't have to renew for 3 years.
This is a lifetime.
I haven't decided yet whether we're going to have lifetime. That's why we're not using the lifetime subscription. We expect most of our readers will be around for a couple centuries at least. Okay, I think we got about a half hour to go. So instead of trying to cram any more data and information and weird opinions in here, I'll open it, we'll have a question period. Gives you a chance to ask everything you couldn't ask the other night at the lecture. Yes?
If you're going to present an advanced course in the topics you presented today, what would you do?
would include?
Yeah, say we've all come through this successfully and open-mindedly, and we're going to come to your next one. What is it? Yeah.
That would include the uncritical inference test, which is lots of fun and teaches these lessons in a different way that people find more memorable because it's a little bit humiliating. Everybody thinks they understand these principles, then they take the test and they find out they're still acting in a mechanical or Aristotelian way. And then they realize they really have to work at internalizing these, and then various other exercises. And descriptions of the 8 circuits of the nervous system with exercises to activate each circuit, experience it from within. And more bad jokes. Yes.
What does it mean, Sirius is a dark god?
Osiris.
Oh, excuse me.
What has happened to your nose?
Something has happened to my nose?
No, it's a fireside theory.
Oh.
Ray made it like fireside theory.
That's the sure way to destroy a speaker's concentration. Sirius is a black god in one translation, or a dark god in another. That probably means that Osiris is a symbol of the dark companion of Sirius. And for further information on that, consult The Sirius Mystery by Robert K.G. Campbell and The Lion Path by Musaeus. Shall I write that down for those who really want to get into that?
Well, does that mean that Isis is supposed to be the other half, the dark half?
Isis is Sirius, represented this way in hieroglyphic, and the dark companion of Sirius. I just forgot the hieroglyphic for it, but that's something like somebody sitting in a chair. That's Osiris. And to find the mystical meanings of that, you got to read the Sirius Mystery by Temple and the Lion Path by Musaeus. And that's a rather technical subject, and I could go on for 4 hours about that, so I'd rather pass on to something that's of more general interest. Yes, Steve? David. Oh, Steve. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, well, you've explained the difference today between how the emic reality, the meta-program, perceives ectic reality, but how does that relate to the experience or the possible experience of being able to change by, people feel they can actually change reality? How does that all fit in?
Yes.
That's something I haven't been clear of in your books and your topic, in your lectures. If I can make a chair appear there, and everyone else all of a sudden sees it appear, and through some kind of means or whatever, if I have the will or whatever to make that happen. How does that fit in? Does that make sense? Thanks for the turn.
Good luck.
This is a paper of the American Anthropological Society, The Complete Quantum Anthropologist, 1974 or 75, I forget which. You look it up. Edwin Harris Walker, The Complete Quantum Anthropologist. Normal consciousness operates at certain brain frequencies. We've been altering them today with the endomax. There are certain brain frequencies which, according to Walker, affect the quantum level. The quantum level is non-locally connected, which is a whole other seminar and lecture, the non-local connection. I mentioned it briefly apropos of Poe and synchronicity. If two photons come out of a mercury atom going in opposite directions, they will remain mathematically correlated no matter how far apart they go. This has been experimentally verified. There's a prediction based on Bell's theorem. If the whole universe came out of one big bang, then everything is still mathematically correlated, and synchronicity is the general law. Causality is just a special case under the general law. Yeah, we're getting back to the Hermes. In such a non-locally connected universe, mind cannot exist in part of it. Mind must be part of every part. Each part is a mirror of the whole. So if you change your consciousness, you change the consciousness of the whole. That is, when you get to this particular set of vibrations. Walker gives you exact quantum equations to tell you just what's happening. He doesn't tell you how to get there. He just tells you when you get there, this is what you're doing. And he correlates this with experiments in parapsychology in which things work out just as far above chance as they could according to his equations. I think this is the best scientific model we have so far to explain how parapsychology operates. It operates in a very random and fluctuating way, like most quantum things, which is why it's so goddamn hard to make it work all the time. As Chief Dan George said in Little Big Man, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The more energy you put into it, and the more you work at it, the more synchronicities of a benevolent nature start to manifest around you. But this is not infallible. It does not prevent you from getting hit by a drunken driver in a car.
What books have you been reading lately?
What books have I been reading lately? Neural and Uncertain. Most recently, The Lion Path by Musaeus. What did I read before that? The 3-Pound Universe by Judith Hopper, a very good book on the brain. I don't know. I've been busy writing. I haven't been reading much lately. Yes.
There's an essay of Yeats where he talks about if I were 25 again, or my advice to the young. Being now and with your experience looking at perhaps cosmic schmuckiness in the past, if you were 25 today, where would you see yourself, or what would you see yourself doing?
You have to ask such hard questions. So you had to pull the string again? If I were 25 right now, if I'd be doing exactly what I'm doing, I'd be working in Hollywood on a screenplay as part of a long-range plan to become first a director and then a producer, and then change the whole mind of the world by putting out films that will absolutely mutate consciousness on this planet. If I was 25, I'd have more time to do it. Being 56, I have to sort of rush it a bit until I'm sure the life extension serums will be around soon. But that's what I'd be doing. Yes?
If there were a device like the transporter in Star Trek that worked as advertised, would you ride it?
I had a conversation like that with my son one time. I said, gee, I'm not sure. I'd like to use that transporter. Half the time, what comes up isn't what you sent down, and sometimes you get 2 copies of what you sent down, the good version and the bad version.
Well, say it works exactly the way it's advertised.
Well, no, I mean, the way it works on the show is that it malfunctions more often than it functions. Computer malfunction is the most common problem on the Enterprise. And I said, I'm not sure I want to use that. And my son said to me, well, you take that chance every time you take acid, don't you? You don't know what's going to come back. I thought, yeah, that's true, yeah. So, I tried the transporter, yes.
Does it sort of help a father-son relationship to be able to do acid together?
When I talk about doing acid, that's all a big put on and a joke. I've never used any illegal. Just to make myself appear fashionable. By writing. You can tell by the way I talk and my skin tone and so on. I haven't ruined myself with illegal drugs. I am mocking.
Last night you were mentioning authors that have influenced you, Joyce, Pound, Burroughs, Geisen, and you mentioned some material that I've been looking for but I've not been able to find. Where can I find Elephant Nudie comics?
Oh God, I haven't seen that in years. I don't know. There are people
They had a
who deal with
collection
old
of
comics.
They had a collection of anthology of issue funnies. They had some of the other comics in there. But it's like if you have to take it in a bunch of other stuff.
It was in Bijou?
They had some of the Skip Williamson, I believe they did.
A much bigger influence on me was Raymond Chandler, and he's easy to find. Also, Flann O'Brien, he's not as easy to find as Chandler, but he's worth looking for, especially the Third Policeman.
Have you considered like trying to write maybe just like a Chandler type novel, just without the cosmic schmuckiness?
Yeah, I have a couple of times. I've actually started the Chandler type detective novel. I always seem to get distracted by something else, but I think one of these days I'm going to do a pure classical Chandler detective novel. Now that I'm living in L.A., it'll be set in L.A. to make it even more classic Chandler. The detective will drive down the Sepulveda, turn on the La Cienega, just like Marlowe used to do, and all that. Now I really know those streets, they're not just names to me. But
Will you set it in the 80s or will you set it back?
I'll set it in the 80s. I think it's interesting to bring that kind of Philip Marlowe character up to date. He would seem even more absurd now, which would make him more attractive to the reader because he's so out of date. The world is even more cynical than it was then, and Marlowe's peculiar sense of honor would make him seem like an absolute lunatic wandering around Southern California. The thing is to carry that off so the audience ends up admiring him and not considering him a lunatic. That's a real challenge. That's the book after the next book.
When you were talking about your magazine, you referred that Robin Wilson was going to give them a feminist point of view, and I just wondered if you would stand on that for her.
We had to decide on a name for my wife is going to be working on this newsletter with me. We had to decide on a name for her column. And I said, why don't we just call it the Futurist Feminist? And she said, I prefer the Feminist Futurist. And I forget which we've decided on, but it's going to be something like that. There are so many futurist magazines that don't have a feminist column. I think we always should.
But what's going to include, what's your viewpoint of the feminist futurist? How do you see the feminist in the future?
Oh, what do I think of the feminist futurist? I think she's a living doll. What's going to be in it, I can't predict. She's a very unpredictable lady. I don't know what she's going to write. Well, probably Linus. We're probably going to have an interview with Linus Pauling and Timothy Leary and Barbara Marx Hubbard. And probably we'll have articles by people like Asfendiari and Dirk Pearson, but this is all in the projected stage now. First we've got to get out a first issue, which will be mostly the Wilson family. We start and the interview with Linus Pauling, unless he disappears or something on us, but we think we've got Pauling lined up. Yes, right there.
Let's see. With you starting up your own press, are you still going to be contributing to Magical Blend?
Oh yes, I'm still going to be contributing to other publications until I get so busy that I got to start cutting things out.
How much longer?
But for the present, I'll go on writing for Magical Blend.
How much longer until your first issue?
It should be out by the end of April, hopefully the middle of April. Yes.
Oh, have you been to Tempe and have you seen the city hall there? Seriously, now.
Where?
Tempe, Arizona, where the university. Have you seen City Hall?
No.
It's an inverted pyramid.
Upside down.
Is that upside down pyramid?
Upside down.
They have one of those in Tucson also. There's an interesting theory about that. It says like whenever anybody goes in there, the IQ point drops 20 points and makes it dull.
You gotta look at it. You gotta try to make it over the 10 feet.
It's one of Frank Lloyd Wright's jokes.
No, actually, I think it was fine.
Well, I thought it was. I told my first time see this inverted pyramid. Oh, no.
That sounds like a Far Side cartoon.
He's got money balls right
All
over.
right, back to the blueprints, let's start over.
You know about the first governor of Arizona?
No,
He's buried on a hill over here in the pyramid. Have you seen the pyramid on top of the hill?
no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's over by the zoo. There's a white pyramid on top of the hill, right? The governor's buried in there along with some of his family. He's a real interesting character. He served 8 terms.
Was he the one who wrote Ben Hur?
No, it's not his name. It's his, like, son-in-law or something like that.
Wasn't it the governor of Arizona who wrote Ben Hur? Who else? Was
He was a territorial governor, I think, of the New Mexico territory.
Oh, New Mexico, I'm sorry. I was one state off, sorry.
It all looks alike.
This wasn't
Yes.
I happen to see the Egyptian symbol, the eye associated with your name. Can you tell me what the eye means?
The eye of Horus?
The Eye of what? The Eye of Horus?
No book reference now. No book.
I picked the Eye of Horus as my symbol because it has meant so many different things to so many groups throughout history. It creates maximum ambiguity, and it prepares the readers for the ambiguities and challenges that lie within my books. To find this symbol all over the place, because everybody thinks they know what it means, but if you talk to 10 people, they'll give you 10 different ideas of what it means. It means the opening of the third eye, the next stage in evolution. It means the Holy Trinity to the Catholics. It means the eye of the devil, according to some fundamentalists who are anti-Masonic. It means bringing art, science, and philosophy together in a common unity at the top. And it's the symbol of the Cao Dai sect of Buddhism in Vietnam. It means something to the Rosicrucians and something else to the Freemasons. It meant something entirely different to the ancient Egyptians. Every century for the last 35 centuries it's had a variety of meanings. To me it means the eye in the triangle. This is not the true meaning, this is just my meaning. There's the triangle and there's the eye, the south. And one side is space, one side is consciousness, and one side is time. Now, as I was saying last night, I guess, most mammals throughout history, and most human beings throughout history have never traveled more than 20 miles from where they were born. We're now in a world where most people have traveled at least 1,000 miles in their lifetime. Many people have traveled, well, how many people here have traveled at least 1,000 miles in their lifetime? See, it's almost everybody. So this side of the triangle is opening up more all the time. There are people who've been in 20 countries and they're not even 30 years old yet. I run into people like that all the time. And then there's time. Our Australopithecine ancestors, who are so beautifully portrayed at the beginning of Kubrick's film 2001, they had a lifespan of around 20 years, just like chimpanzees. As late as the French Revolution, lifespan was around 28 years. It was 50 years at the turn of the century. Now it's 73 and galumphing rapidly ahead. So we're getting not only more space, we're getting more time all the time. The triangle is getting bigger in consciousness. We're learning more and more to mix and change and accelerate our consciousness, raise IQ, expand perceptions, galvanize our neuropeptide system for increased creativity. We got the lily tank, we got the psychedelics, which you'll know illegal, I believe, are still being widely experimented and researched. And we got lily tanks, we got these machines, we got biofeedback, we're learning new techniques all the time. And so I see the I, the self, constantly changing as we get more and more space, more and more time, more and more consciousness. And that leads to Leary's celebrated formula, SM, which stands for space migration, I squared, which is intelligence intensification, learning how to use different types of intelligence, not just one static linear IQ, but developing different kinds of sensitivity and capacities to block situations in their wholeness, in their right brain weight, and many other kinds of intelligence. And we're expanding lifespan all the time, and with the current research, we're probably going to double it in our time. So the triangle gets bigger and bigger. We've got life extension down here. You put them all together, and you get smile, which I think is the evolutionary message of where humanity is going. So that's what the eye in the triangle means to me. It may never have meant that to the Freemasons or the Rosicrucians or anybody else, but that's the modern meaning I've given it.
How did Aleister Crowley get so high up in the Golden Dawn when he was such a heroin addict? You know he was a heroin addict.
Now there's an example of what I started out with. We know so many things. Better for who, better where, what context, when, and so on. Apparently, it's very profitable for the rulers, but the herdsmen or whatever they are, the people who lead the sheep around, it's very profitable for them that the sheep never learn the difference between meaningful and meaningless statements. So they can always be agitated by totally meaningless statements if those statements are resonant enough. You could, with the proper conditioning, with modern mass media, with the police to enforce it and so on, you could probably get people to go to war over colorless green ideas, sleep furiously. Just tell them that gang over there deny that colorless green ideas, sleep furiously. They're enemies of Christ. They say the Lord's Prayer backwards, and they just won't admit that colorless green ideas sleep furiously. And with the proper propaganda techniques repeated over and over again, the majority of males between 19 and 23 would be glad to go over and kill those people. Because that's the age at which males tend to be violent anyway, if they're going to be violent at all. So it's very easy to recruit them over totally meaningless statements. Bow wow is a case of rough. No, bow wow is not a case of rough. This is the most astounding fact about humanity, our willingness to fight over totally meaningless statements that can't be proven or disproven.
Maybe we just like to fight.
Yeah, maybe we just like to fight. As the territorial psychic. We're looking for a rationalization to exercise our territoriality. I would like a couple of volunteers real quick to see if you can think of good examples of meaningless statements that you see in the newspapers.
Military intelligence.
Military intelligence.
Coca-Cola adds life.
Coca-Cola adds life. Is there any way of testing that, or is it proving it or disproving it? Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation. How the hell did I get into that generation? I did enjoy. Any others?
Whiter than white.
Whiter than white.
New and improved.
What?
New and improved.
New and improved. Is there any way of measuring that? You don't even know for sure it's new. They sometimes clap that on without changing the formula at all.
4 out of 5 doctors agree.
Immanentize the eschaton.
Immanentize the eschaton. Don't let them immanentize the eschaton.
Balance the budget.
What is that?
I was just looking for something. We got any more cups around here? That whole thing about transubstantiation led to continuous warfare for hundreds of years. There was also the thing about, in the Holy Trinity, does the Spirit proceed from the Father alone and the Son therefrom the Spirit? Or does the Son and the Spirit both proceed from the Father directly? Or did all three, which begat what at the beginning? Or did they all come into existence at the same time? And they were fighting over that in the last days of the Roman Empire. They used to come to ecclesiastical conclaves. Every bishop would have his own tough guys with him, and they'd all be carrying clubs. And the last one standing got their stuff into the official church dogma. That's how the dogmas was decided. The guys who had the biggest clubs. All of it, the totally meaningless issues. Nobody has ever observed the Holy Trinity to observe which begat what or which came before which or anything like that. No. I just wanted an empty cup. Now I will give you a scientific demonstration. This is your brain. This is stupid, oversimplified television commercials. Any questions? I want to do that. I didn't have the equipment. I want to do that with a big watermelon like Gallagher uses. A giant watermelon and a big mallet, and I want to do it on nationwide TV as soon as possible, and I'm working on that project. And people will sit up and say, what? There's a perfect example of a meaningless demonstration. How is this like my brain? How is this like drugs? Which drugs is it like? And nobody's supposed to think about things like that when they see that crap on television. They're just supposed to go deeper into their trance and say, yes, I hear, I
John really designed that commercial because he's saying, you want to eat a raw egg or would you rather have a cooked egg?
Cooked eggs taste better.
Yeah.
Oh, shucks. I don't know. Professor Popper never does that in front of the class. Let's see. All round squares eat red cabbage. Well, since we can't find round squares, we can't observe their eating. That's another meaningless statement. But remember, most meaningless statements aren't as obvious as colorless green ideas sleep furiously or round squares all eat red cabbage. Keep your eye out the next time you read the newspaper and see how many meaningless statements you see. Beethoven is better than Mozart. I already discussed that one. That's obviously self-reflexive. I had the odd experience of flying last time I flew the Atlantic. I read 2 reviews of John Huston's film Victory within a couple of days of each other, one in a Dublin newspaper and one in a San Francisco newspaper. One said the movie was dull and confusing, and the other said it was tight and suspenseful. Now, was the dullness and confusion in the movie or in the mind of the critic? Was the tightness and suspense in the movie or in the mind of the critic? Who is the master who makes the grass green? The Pope is infallible in matters of faith and morals. We got on that one. We got 1/5 of the class accepted it, saintly simplicity, and 4/5 of the class rejected it. Now that we're out of the Aristotelian true or false game, where do you think it should go?
Game rule.
A game rule. Hey, you've been reading my books. Yeah, and I'm running out of space here, unfortunately. Should I turn it over to another page or try to keep it all on one page?
You can tape it up next week.
We'll put it up here. Game rule. If you want to play the Roman Catholic game, you got to accept that rule, by and large. It's a funny thing. Even game rules sometimes have flexibility. By and large, if you want to be a Catholic, you got to accept the game rule. The Pope is infallible. Just like if you want to play baseball, you got to accept the game rule. The umpire's decision is binding. However, the Church is eager to keep some individuals it doesn't want to lose. So there are those who go around saying the Pope isn't infallible and they haven't been kicked out of the Church. In the 19th century, there was Lord Acton. Currently, there's Archbishop Lefebvre in France. But by and large, this game rule does hold. There is no scientific evidence for ESP. A lot of people believe that firmly. I can usually get a good argument started by challenging that. I suggest that's a game rule too. There's a lot of what looks like scientific evidence to me, but the people who say that have defined science in such a way that all the evidence is not scientific evidence. And I think that's a game rule with the kind of science they want to play. Because parapsychologists have been doing experiments on ESP for over 100 years, following all the usual protocols of scientific method. This does not count as scientific evidence because the people who don't want to believe it have redefined scientific proof so that it's so that kind of research is excluded. Murray Gell-Mann, one of the more intelligent spokesmen for PsyCop, says an extraordinary hypothesis requires an extraordinary proof. Therefore, an ordinary proof isn't good enough for any extraordinary hypothesis. And an extraordinary hypothesis is anything that conflicts with his prejudices, I think. So therefore, you can never prove the existence of the ESP to Dr. Gell-Mann. I think an extraordinary hypothesis requires extraordinary proof is a more erudite way of saying, don't confuse me with the facts, my mind is already made up. Well, that's just my opinion. I'll debate that with Dr. Gell-Mann sometime, I'm sure. Especially when he hears I'm going around issuing this criticism of his position.
What proof is there? What kind of proof is there?
I don't know. He wants an extraordinary proof. I'll settle for an ordinary run-of-the-mill scientific proof. If you do the test over and over and people score above chance, I think there's an unknown factor. ESP is the current name for that unknown factor, although it may not be the best name.
Maybe he should do some good drugs.
Yeah, that's what I think, man.
Dr. Wilson, do a number of the indeterminate statements, like ESP, for instance, in Pluto, seem to be a function of time. Where in the 18th century, I guess the French Academy didn't believe that meteorites existed.
That's right.
And germs didn't exist, and now.
Yeah, in the 18th century, lots of people called meteorites into scientific assemblies, and they were all rejected on the grounds. Well, we know rocks don't fall out of the sky. You just think you saw this fall out of the sky. It was on the ground all the time, and you misperceived. You thought you saw it falling. Isn't it strange how much that sounds like the current line they give to UFO witnesses? You just think you saw that. Actually, you saw something else. We know because in our reality tunnel there are no meteorites or UFOs. All men are created equal. We got 1/5 for and 4/5 against. I suggest that's a game rule of Jeffersonian democracy. All men are not equally tall. They're not equally good at writing poetry. They're not equally good at playing Beethoven string quartets. They're not equally adept at painting landscapes and so on. It's a game rule that we're going to treat all men as equal at the beginning of this country. All persons are created equal is emerging as the game rule of contemporary America. That's no more true than the other one. It's a game we've decided to try playing. All entities are equal is the basic philosophy of Buddhism, and it's very good for Buddhists. I'm a Buddhist part-time myself, except when rats get into my house. Then I become a human chauvinist again. But by and large, these are all game rules. You decide you're going to treat all entities as equal until you get too damn many of those cockroaches. Yeah. I think it's best to you try to prove them or disprove them scientifically. They turn into meaningless statements, but they're not meaningless. These are ways people are going to orient themselves to the world. If I'm going to regard all entities as equal, that's a profound change in me, and it requires work, by the way. You don't just make up your mind you're going to do it. You got to keep working at it every day. Because the major error of organized religion is the idea if they can get you to say, I accept everybody as my brother and sister in Jesus, you're going to be changed. But the plain fact is the next day some son of a bitch is going to get you awfully angry. So you got to work at learning how to treat everybody as your brother and sister in Jesus or as an equal expression of the Buddha mind or whichever system you like. That requires work. So it's a game rule. It's a way of reorienting your life. Even though it's scientifically speaking meaningless, it's a very profoundly meaningful rule if you want to orient your life around that.
child has never wept and dashed 1,000.
That's
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, I seem to have missed that. A boy has never wept nor dashed 1,000 chem.
That's true. St. Dutch Schultz said that as his
Let's just run down. Is that a game rule? Nobody thinks it's a game. Relatively true?
Yeah.
Scientifically true? Mathematically true?
Could be.
Legally true? Historically true?
Yeah.
Indeterminate?
Endorphins.
Self-reflexive? Very self-reflexive. Poetry?
Yes.
Sure, probably, yeah. Meaningless? Depends on who's making the judgment. You see, these things don't exist in nature. These are labels, these are categories that a human mind has invented, or several human minds. I didn't invent these categories. They pop up in various places in books on modern logic. A lot of people trying to revise logic to make it more flexible. I've just combined a whole bunch of what I think are useful suggestions. But these do not exist in nature. There are no meaningless statements or self-reflective statements or true or false statements. These are categories the human mind invents to structure nature and decide how to deal with various parts of it. The boy has never wept or dashed 1,000 kin. For those of you who want some context for that, that was a very, although it fits the classic logical positivist definition of a meaningless statement, it was urgently, existentially meaningful to the person who said it. The person who said it was Arthur Fleigenheimer, born August 6, 1904, promoted to glory, as the Salvation Army says, on October 23, 1935. He was promoted to glory by Charlie Workman, Mendy Weiss, and a couple of others whose names I forget, who were hired by the mafia because the Dutchman was getting to be a nuisance and an impediment to trade. He wanted to murder a district attorney, and the mafia decided murdering district attorneys brought down too much heat for Dutchman to let them tell him what to do. He didn't consider himself an organization man. And so to prevent Dutch Schultz from murdering the district attorney, who happened to be named Tom Dewey and later ran for president and got beaten, they sent 4 torpedoes around to kill Dutch at a clam chowder house in Newark, New Jersey, October 23, 1935. And Dutch lasted for about 12 hours after the 4 of them used their guns at him. He had a high fever, and the police put a stenographer named Timothy O'Leary.
No.
Isn't that strange how everything connects to everything? To take down everything Dutch said. And when you read Dutch's last words, it's obvious that everything he said was tremendously, urgently important to him. There's a tone of emotional urgency about it all. Like, get the doll a rafting. Mother is the best bet, and don't let Satan draw you too fast.
Didn't you say French-Canadian bean soup?
French-Canadian bean soup. Did you buy the whole deal? A boy has never wept nor dashed 1,000 chem. The bears were in trouble and the sidewalks were in trouble. The Supreme Court would hear it. Be sure to crack down on Hitler and the Chinaman's commander. This was all obviously very important stuff to Dutch. And nobody else has ever been able to make head or tails out of it except a few poets who looked into it and found a great deal of poetic imagery in it and a tremendous evocation of the death experience, the dying of the light. Anyway, that's where that comes from. A boy has never wept nor dashed 1,000 chem. That's another example that an existentially, objectively meaningless statement may be urgently meaningful to the person who says it. I think Dutch was really trying to communicate something important. The next sentence in this exercise will be true. 4/5 accepted that. Naive people, I don't know how they got in here. That's obviously incomplete. Incomplete. You can't judge that by itself. How many times do you see incomplete propositions in political speeches, and you're asked to respond to them emotionally by jumping up and yelling, "Hooray, hooray, vote for him," or "Sieg Heil," or something like that? They're parts of a system, but they're not the whole system. I'm in favor of giving an equal tax breaks to everybody. What the hell does that mean? You gotta wait till there are more details filled in before you know whether the statement is good for you or bad for you. What does he mean by a fair tax break for everybody? As long as they have a tax system, that means they're robbing you to keep their business going. Chase and Sanborn doesn't do that. You gotta buy the coffee before you owe them any money. The gas companies don't do that. However much you complain about gas prices, you don't have to pay them unless you want gas to run your car. You don't have to pay anything to an insurance company unless you want insurance. You don't have to pay anything to the Catholic Church unless you want to be a Catholic and play the Catholic game and accept the Pope is infallible. But these bandits in Washington, whether you want to play their game or not, they come around with guns and take 20% of your money if they can get it, or more than that if they can get more. And so when people talk about let's have a more fair tax policy, it's like, let's be a little more decent to the slaves. Or let's burn a couple fewer witches this year. Well, anyway, okay, I'm just going off on my own diatribe there.
Do you have a personal feeling about that? Personal feeling about that?
About what?
What you were just speaking
Yeah, I feel that if a hold-up man comes in with a gun and says, "Give me your wallet," I give him my wallet. I got to get on the phone, start calling to have my credit cards canceled. I've lost some cash. It's a big nuisance. But it's a basically honest relationship. I know he's a thief. He knows he's a thief. He doesn't pretend to be anything else. I get very furious when they use all sorts of tricky language to hide the fact that they're stealing from me, and they try to make me feel guilty if I try to defend myself by hiding some of my money from them.
Try to make you feel guilty if you don't do it until April 14th.
Yeah, I think that's semantic black magic. They're trying to hypnotize us. It's like in Ireland, you gotta have a license to own a TV. And they have these commercials on every hour. Every hour the television is on, they have these commercials. The guy's sitting in a dark room so you can't see his face, speaking in a low mumble. I was so ashamed. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look my children in the eye again. My little girl was so hurt. My wife was so embarrassed. I could see the neighbors looking at me. They caught him without a TV license, you see. And then on comes a thick, heavy baritone voice, like the guy who warns you on American television about why you need auto insurance. And this guy comes on and says, "He was a TV sponger, and he got caught. Don't let it happen to you." I expect he's going to say next, "Don't let it happen to you, you no good shit. We all know how bad you are." And it's all playing on this guilty conscience the Jesuits built into the Irish Catholics in the last 200 years. And yet they do make people feel guilty. Do you feel guilty that you don't have a TV license? If they broadcast that at you every day, every hour the television was on, day after day, week after week, year after year, you'd start feeling guilty if you didn't have a TV license. Jesus, I'm a sponger. I'm cheating. I'm nasty. And IRS works on the same black magic. Anyway, the next sentence will be true is an incomplete statement. But now we can make it complete. We got the next one. The preceding sentence was false. Now we can judge the system. So, is that true or false?
Yes.
Strange loop. It's a paradox, and I prefer to call paradoxes strange loops because I like Hofstadter's book in which he introduced that terminology. So I call it a strange loop. If it's true, it's false. And if it's false, it's true. There are a lot of strange loops in logic. There's Empedocles, the Cretan, says, Cretans always lie. If that's true, it's false. And if it's false, it may be true. Then there's Bertrand Russell's, Bertrand Russell is very good at these. There's the barber who shaves every man in town who doesn't shave himself. Does the barber shave himself? Well, he does if he doesn't. But if he doesn't, he does.
I think catch-22 was, he's in, he's out, he's in.
Yeah, it's like, then there's the class of all classes that are not members of itself. In mathematics, you got classes that are members of themselves and classes that are not members of themselves. The class of all classes that are not members of themselves turns out to be a member of itself. It took Bertrand Russell a long time to invent that one, and he must have enjoyed it immensely. But we run into these strange loops all the time in life. You've got to be responsible for yourself, we're told continually. Then we're told, no man is an island, we are all a part of the main. You've got to be responsible for everybody else too. How can you be responsible for everybody else when it's hard enough being responsible for yourself? And then they tell you can't be responsible for yourself, you're just a robot. Modern psychology is proven it. Then they tell you, ask not what you can do for your country, ask only what your country can do for you. No, I got it backwards. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask only what you can do for your country. But that's, if everybody acted like that, we'd have a totally totalitarian government. It doesn't do anything for anybody and just milks everybody like cows. The classic catch-22 is the military one. If you can prove you're crazy, you don't have to kill women and children anymore. But if you try to prove you're crazy, that proves you're sane, so they keep you up at the front killing more women and children. You got to be sane to drop bombs on populations of civilians and kill all the little 3-year-old kids running around playing in the sand, because crazy people shouldn't do that, because the army doesn't want to employ crazy people. So you don't have to do it if you can prove you're crazy. But if you try to prove you're crazy, that proves you're sane, because it's the same thing to try to get out of that. Because while you're flying up there, dropping the bombs when they bomb on the innocent victims, there are people down there got anti-aircraft guns trying to shoot you out of the sky. So the same thing to do is to try to avoid that. But the only way to avoid it is to prove you're not sane. So these strange loops don't exist just in logic. They're not just games logicians invented to play tricks on one another. Our whole society is full of strange loops. Can anybody think of any strange loops in the college system around here?
Well, it's studying Blake College or Whitman, which you're supposed to intently study to understand his poetry, but to understand his poetry means to get out of school.
Yeah, then there's my favorite in the one dads. When I was young, it used to drive me absolutely batty. You can get the job if you have experience, but you can't get the experience until you've got a job in that field. So you look at the next ad, and that says you can have a job if you've got experience. So you go down all the ads, and they all want experience. Where do you get the experience if you can't get the job in the first place?
It looks great.
What I always liked was in the old LA Free Press years ago, when they had the person with one ad in the back. They had the people they want all these weird perverted stuff and everything, but the all ads always have no weirdos, please.
Job and
Like what people like seek saying, no weirdos, please.
I got my first job in the publishing business by faking experience. That's the way to get out of these strange loops. Don't accept the definitions of the strange loop. Yeah, I could have gone on forever trying to get experience and not getting it because I didn't have experience. So I finally went into a newspaper and told them I had experience. And about 6 months later, I got called in by personnel and said, "You faked your experience." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we should fire you for that, but the editor is happy with your work, so we're going to keep you." And so I got away with it. I think that's the way most people get experience these days, because almost all ads say you must have experience. That's the only way to get it, is by faking it. I think we've gone long enough without a break. I think it's time for another break. So, there are more copies of Not
We love programs and all kinds of things. It's fun. Coordinating it. We should be doing on the side of us.
Actually, we're 55th degree.
This is David and Conrad and Steve, Vicky, and Evnika.
I just added one more book to the reading list on those who want to know about the pay-to-way cocaine in Odessa network. Another one I just remembered, The Vatican Connection by Richard Hammer. Now, we are going to repeat the listening experimental, only with a difference. This time, I don't want you to put words on what you hear. As far as possible, listen to the sounds and don't put a word on it. If you hear paper rustling, try not to think paper rustling. I know that's hard. All the books on yoga admit it's hard, but it's worth trying. Don't get too pessimistic if you're not succeeding at first. Just keep trying to push the words away and just listen to the sounds. Try to see how many different sounds you can hear without putting words on them. Otherwise, it's just the same as the way I did it before. You start when I say start, and you stop when I say stop. Are there any questions? Is that clear what I want? Everybody understands? Okay, I gotta find the second hand down here. Okay. Start. Just push the words away. Stop. Now, how many felt a sense of euphoria while you were doing that? Put your hands up high so we can see.
Why the confusion?
How many felt a kind of tranquility at some point during it? How many felt sort of high? Okay, you were high, euphoric, and tranquil. Isn't that marvelous? Just with a simple exercise like that. That's an old Sufi exercise. That can center you and quiet you down and help you deal with stress at almost any time. Just close your eyes and listen to the sounds. This is, by the way, the first two rows almost have tried the Endomax by now. Let's see if I can get a bit of a comparison. How many people felt they got quite euphoric? Not just euphoric, but quite euphoric, full of joy and general good feelings about things. Hold your hands up real high so we can see them. Unusually euphoric.
From the Endomax?
No, from that exercise. Okay, I just want to see if there's any difference between the people who had the Endomax and the people who haven't had it yet. That was a direct encounter with the master who makes the grass green. I don't have to repeat the whole experiment to demonstrate. You all heard different sounds. We did that once already. How long was that? 2.5 minutes. Anybody else?
3 minutes.
2 minutes.
90 seconds.
1 minute, 30 seconds. Okay, let's vote on it like we did the last time. How many think 30 seconds? Oh, that went down from 1 to 0. How many think 1 minute? That went down from 10 to 1. How many think 1 minute, 30 seconds? 1, 2, 3, 4. That went down from 10 to 4. How many think 2 minutes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That went up from 10 to 13. How many think 2 minutes, 30 seconds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That went up from 1 to 10. How many think 3 minutes? 1, 2. That went down from 8 to 2. How many think 5 minutes? That went down from 1 to 0. Not putting words on the experience changes the time for most people. And the general tendency is to make the time seem longer, with a few exceptions. But the low estimates went down, the middle estimates went up, or stayed the same. So if you don't put words on it, the time seems to get longer. Incidentally, what you're doing during that exercise is getting into alpha, almost certainly. People who do any type of meditative exercise with an EEG on, it turns out their brain is moving into the alpha rhythm. The alpha rhythm is the self-healing rhythm, and it's the rhythm of creativity. It's a very good place to be. So that's another reason why that exercise is worth knowing. And it also refreshes your memory of the basic lesson I'm teaching here all through this workshop, which is that we're all creating our own reality tunnels, even if we're not creating edit reality, about which we can't say anything except that that's where we pull all of our personal reality tunnels out of. But we're all creating our own reality tunnels. Every country, every tribe, every subculture has its own. What?
How long was it?
How long was it? According to the inertial system in which I was in, it was approximately 0.1% of what it would be for an extraterrestrial passing in a spaceship at the speed of light, as opposed to the speed of light. There is no absolute time in the Einsteinian universe, and the time on the left is the theoretical time of a theoretical instrument, and it's not the existential time that anybody experienced here. Did anybody experience it? No, nobody experienced the exact time on my watch. Almost everybody experienced less time on wartime. There wasn't a single person who experienced the exact time on the watch. What does that mean? That just means the watch is an arbitrary device. Now I would like to have some people throw out some interesting nouns for me. Start with you. Wombat. I knew I'd get a good one from you, Eric.
George Washington Bridge.
George Washington Bridge.
Miskatonic University.
What? Miskatonic University.
Bob Dobbs.
Bob Dobbs.
Praise Bob. Praise Bob. Jesus, damn ass.
Your what?
Borborygmus.
Spell that, please.
B-O-R.
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 Y-G-N-U-S.
Y-G-N-U-S. Would you define that, please?
It's the sound that gas makes in your
Borborygmus. The sound that gas makes. That's very, that's right.
What
Learn
do you
something
think?
new every day. Okay, another word.
Schrodinger's cat.
Schrödinger's cat.
May or may not, excuse me.
A few more.
Aries.
Aries.
Afro-light.
What?
Afro-light.
Serendipity.
Republican.
Republican.
Republicans and coprolites go together.
Coprolites.
Yeah, it's fossilized crap.
Okay, we're getting, wait a minute, Illuminati. And what was, I missed a couple in there.
Serendipity.
Serendipity. I've been criticizing Aristotelian logic and showing multi-valued logic in which we've got indeterminate values and meaningless values and different kinds of truth, scientific truth, legal truth, historical truth, and so on. And giving you in general a multi-valued logic, now I'd like to give you a couple of three-valued logics. Does anybody have a coin? That's what I was groping around for. I thought I had a coin in my pocket, but I don't. Here we have a penny. The penny is either heads or tails, right? I haven't been meddling. He's not a shill. This is an authentic American penny with a head and a tail. And an edge. And so it has only two values. It's either heads or tails, right? No getting away from that. Okay. Now, what value was it at that point when it was up there? Indeterminate. So even a penny that isn't limited by Aristotelian logic. It goes into a maybe state before it arrives finally at heads or tails. John von Neumann was the first one to suggest that the way to discuss quantum mechanics was in terms of a three-valued logic: yes, no, and maybe. And most people think, well, that may be true on the quantum level, but that doesn't have any applications on the daily life level. But every time you toss a coin, it's in the maybe state before it arrives definitely at the head state or the tail state or wherever it eventually arrives. When you're walking down the street, did you ever read James Thurber's The Admiral at the Wheel? He tells about what happened when his glasses got broke. He saw the most fascinating things. He saw an octopus leaning out a window on West Fifth Avenue from his apartment, and all 8 tentacles flailing out the window. And on 42nd Street, he saw a unicycle. You know, a unicycle has one wheel, unlike a bicycle, which has two, or a tricycle. A unicycle. He saw a unicycle speeding through the traffic with an admiral with a great big white beard blowing in the breeze, wearing 1890s style admiral uniform. And after seeing that, Thurber said he was really sorry to have his glasses repaired because he knew he wouldn't see wonderful things like that anymore. That was before acid. That was back in the BA period. Most of our perceptions are maybes. You thought you saw the hall, but by now I got you in the state where you know you maybe saw the hall. You didn't see what other people saw, and some of the things you saw probably weren't in the hall at all. They were memories of previous halls. If I took you out and had you look around, we might find some of the things on that list weren't out there at all. They were just false memories. And most people saw things without color, and I don't think there's anything out there without color at all. John seems like a good friend. I run into John in the morning, I say, how are things going, John? And he says, we're up there. Man, what the hell is he mad at me for? What have I done to offend him? That's a maybe. I'm assuming he's mad at me. Maybe he isn't mad at me. Maybe he's mad at his wife. Maybe he's mad at IRS. Maybe he's mad at the people who spilled his garbage all over the lawn in the middle of the night because they were having a drunken party and staggered across his lawn on their way to their cars. Who knows what? Maybe he's not mad at all. Maybe he's suddenly got a speech impediment. He's going to a speech doctor to be treated for it. Almost all our perceptions are maybes, but we treat them as yes or no's. So understanding the three-valued logic can be very helpful in orienting ourselves to this world. Be very careful before saying John is so-and-so. Remember, that's a guess, that's a maybe. Look and see how much supporting evidence you can get. look especially for how much contradictory evidence you can get that might lead you to revise that. Yes?
Do you think that's kind of a pre-wired survival way of, in our brains to think?
Yeah, we have these pre-wired survival circuits. The trouble is they are very early evolutionary products and they're not totally dependable. The rabbit has a pre-wired survival circuit that if something threatening happens, freeze. And that works pretty well in the woods most of the time. If a rabbit freezes, evolutionarily, because of random chance, according to the Darwinians, according to God's plan, according to the theists, for one reason or another, rabbits have fur that matches their environment. You find white snowshoe rabbits in the north and brownish rabbits around here and so on. If a rabbit freezes, he tends to disappear into the background, and predators find it harder to find the rabbit. Now, a rabbit in the middle of a highway sees a car coming, that is registered as threat, and the rabbit freezes instead of running off the highway, and the rabbit gets killed. So these biosurvival reflexes are not totally dependent. That's why we developed higher circuits to monitor those more primitive circuits. Another way of getting beyond Aristotelian linear logic is the Poe game, invented by Edward de Bono, an English psychologist. De Bono put a full-page ad in the London Times a couple of years ago before one of the summit meetings between Reagan and Gorbachev's predecessor, whatever his name was. Who was before Gorbachev? Was anybody remember? Andropov, yeah. De Bono put a big full-page ad in the London Times telling them both to study Poe before they met each other, and they might be able to communicate better. I don't know if either Reagan or Andropov bothered studying Poe. Poe is just like von Neumann's yes, no, and maybe. Poe teaches you to regard most questions as yes, no, and Poe, instead of forcing everything into either or. Start out with a three-valued logic. If you can reduce it to a two-valued logic, okay. Then you can reduce it to a one-valued answer if you're very lucky, except for Murphy's Law. But start out with yes, no, and Poe. Don't force things into yes and no right away. Most things don't fit in there. Every time you see a friend across a crowded room, like the song says, you don't know if you're seeing your friend or somebody who looks slightly like your friend. You have to cross half the room before you're sure. Most things are in the maybe class. But Poe has another use too, which is known as lateral thinking. Some of you may have heard Dr. Graham yesterday say that lateral thinking is right brain thinking. Poe is a way of developing right brain thinking